Hola a todos y bienvenidos. You're listening to the Voices of Hope podcast from the School of Hope in Guatemala. Our 20th anniversary is in 2023, and we want to celebrate by sharing our stories with you. Each episode will have a special guest who has been part of our journey and the fundamental success of our school. Their stories will inspire you, and we hope you learn a thing or two about our wonderful country of Guatemala along the way. So, let's get started!
Hola! Welcome to the third episode of Voices of Hope. My name is Sinead. I'm the Development Coordinator at EFTC, working with our team in Guatemala, the US, and the UK offices, spreading the word about our wonderful foundation and inspiring people to visit us here at the School of Hope. Throughout this series, I will be talking to the people who make EFTC possible, from students to sponsors. Today, we are talking to the director of the project here in Guatemala, Sara Miller. Hi, Sara. We are so happy to have you here, sharing your story on the podcast.
Hi, Sinead. Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Great. So our first question is, why Guatemala? Did you choose it, or was it a matter of fate?
I think it was really a matter of fate. I applied to the US Peace Corps after graduating from college, and I was supposed to go to Peru originally, and was actually in the way the Peace Corps works, you're waiting for a long time. So I waited for a year and a half for a placement, and they sent me to Guatemala. And so I had traveled to South America, but I'd never been to Central America, but I'd always had a lot of interest in Guatemala. And university, I wrote several papers about it. I really liked Guatemala a lot. And so I was really pleased that this ended up being my Peace Corps placement and then where I built my life.
That's so interesting that you kind of had Guatemala already a part of your life before kind of fate bringing you here. And so what was the path to doing Peace Corps here and then continuing to live here?
So I finished Peace Corps in 2016. I went home traveling. I met my now husband. I saw a job application for EFTC, looked into it, and there was a video on the website at the time about a student who I really related to because she reminded me a lot of the students I worked with in my Peace Corps service. And I saw firsthand living in the Western Highlands how the lack of opportunities, lack of education, especially for women, can affect my students, and I'd always wanted to do more. And so I really connected with the foundation through that video, applied, and rest is kind of history.
So how long have you been working for EFTC then?
Just about 6 years.
And can you take us through the different positions that you've had?
Definitely. So I started in 2017 as a visitor and volunteer coordinator, which is a really interesting role because I got to meet a lot of our donors, a lot of our board members, a lot of our sponsors. And when people come and volunteer and visit the project, they fall in love with it. And so that's one of the best parts of that role because you get to see all of the good stuff over and over again. So I did that for a year. After that, I started doing kind of a hybrid role for 2018 where I helped kind of manage that kind of fundraising team that we had and develop different parts of what we were focusing on, working close with the sponsorship coordinator and communications. And then at the end of 2018, I applied for a role to kind of do a little bit more fundraising and also help out the director of the foundation, work on strategic planning and organizing. And after that, our long-term founder and project director decided that she was ready for new adventures and new steps in her life. And so I was able to have the privilege to work as the foundation coordinator. And I've been in this role for about 3.5 years now.
I love to see that you made such an impact on the foundation, and the way that you talk also shows that the foundation has made such an impact on you. So that's really cool to see. So how does it feel now being the project director?
It's really good. I like it a lot. I think that I really had the advantage working in very different areas of the foundation that when I needed to adapt to this leadership role, I'd already been able to get to know the team, work in different areas, get to know the donors. So all of that was a huge advantage and made the transition smooth. every year is a challenge in a different way. They've been hard years. Most of the time that I've been in the coordinator role was the pandemic. I had only been in the leadership role for about 6 months when COVID hit, so most of it was getting the team to go from home. So 2020 was about how do we run our organization remotely? How do we run a school without students? How do we get through this? Adapting all of our services. Then 2021 was about trying to reopen the school and not being able to, and facing all of those frustration and losses that we had as an organization. And then seeing parts of the project be able to finally reopen, which was great, but not being able to reopen the school. And then 2022 has really been kind of coming out of pandemic and also being able to see the school reopen, go through many transitions from running a dual schedule, which is something we weren't outfitted to do, we weren't ready to do, but we figured out how to do. Then being able mid-year to see the groups come back together and have a full population, and then ending the year really normal and being able to have graduations and celebrations and everything before. So that's kind of the summary of the 3 years. So they've been definitely challenging and growth years, and it keeps you on your toes. There's always another thing to do, another thing to learn, and another way to grow in this role, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like you're kind of playing down the role that COVID had during it, because that's a lot of transition that nobody knows how to handle. No one's been through before, and you seem to have taken it like just in stride and dealt with it. So you talked a lot about the different things, the different challenges, and what it's led to now. Can you tell us what has been your happiest moment at the school, or at least one of them?
It's really hard to narrow it down because there's so many happy memories, but I think a lot of them come down to like the same theme. One of my favorite times of year is watching the graduations and watching kids that we've sat in meetings, we've had phone calls, we've worried about all the programs that we've put in place, and seeing them graduate and seeing them proud of themselves and seeing them move on to other stages of their life. I think that's some of the happiest moments, because you get there and you think, oh, this is all worth it, this is all incredible, and you can really see the impact firsthand. So I think that's a big happy moment for me every year, and especially this year, being able to have them in person again just felt like such a big win. And being able to see them celebrate the way they should again and the way the world should was really amazing. I'd say the other like happy moments always revolve around watching the team grow. We get people, usually we recruit our staff members pretty young, pretty fresh in their career. It's really hard to find a stable job in Guatemala, so a lot of times when they're first starting, they're just very excited to have this opportunity. And so I think watching over the years the team grow and adapt, learn new skills, watching people who came in uncertain of themselves grow in their confidence and their abilities in their job, those moments are always the happiest for me as well.
I feel like this is such a special time of year. So right now it's November, December time. And so we've had all the graduations again in person. And it's just a culmination of the work that everyone has done. Like, this is the goal, and we can like tangibly see it. And it's so beautiful to not only see the students, but also their parents and their family members and everyone come together to celebrate this grand accomplishment. And then I was reflecting, so we had a gathering with all of staff yesterday just to celebrate the end of the year. And I was reflecting on, we had like a reflection circle, and everyone's answers were, so we went around the circle and talked about some of the happiest moments that we've had over the past year. And it was just beautiful to hear everyone and be in a job that everyone's so passionate about the work that they're doing, and everyone is just like a good person and here for great reasons. So that was lovely to have too. So it's a really nice time of year for everything, just like reflecting on all the work that we're doing with all the people that we're doing it with. So now kind of transitioning to something a little different. What has it been like working in a foreign country?
It's such an interesting experience and such a privilege to be able to work in another country. I think it's interesting because no matter how long you work, how fluent you become in the language, how much a part you feel of the country, you're always a step outside of it too. So I think that's been really interesting, because I've been in Guatemala for almost 9 years now, but there's still so many parts where I'm straddling two lines, two cultures, two experiences. So it's been really interesting to be able to, like, especially with the school, to become part of a community, to become part of a program that's doing so much, and get to know kids and staff members so well, and then always be a little bit on the other side as well. And so it's such an interesting experience. I love it because it's full of challenges. it's the double challenge of having a lot of responsibilities in my work, but also in my second language, but also in a different culture. And so there's always something new to learn and never boring.
Is there something that you can recall from this past year that kind of has all those three different aspects, or one of them that you have felt?
I think there's so many different experiences. One that I had recently is we had one of our students passed away, and so I went through the whole kind of funeral experience here in Guatemala, which is very different from the States. It's about community grieving, it's about everyone coming together, it's about grief in a very loud, very spoken, very shared thing, where I feel like in the culture that I come from, grief is not a shared experience. It's a very solitary, individualized experience. So it was really beautiful participating in that, but you almost feel like you're watching it through a window. You're a step removed. You're not, as much I care about the student, as much I care about the community, it's not, you're not right in the community either, and so you always feel a little removed. So I think that was one of those experiences. Another experience are just funny things in the day-to-day. In Guatemala, there's a term for special education, and there's a difference for special education psychology, and what we do is on the special education psychology, but I always kind of struggle to pronounce the word, so I called it the other program, which caused massive confusion in the organization for a long time. Finally, I just had to say, look guys, I couldn't pronounce it, so I just called it the word that was easier for me. So there's funny things like that, or you get really good at I don't know every word in Spanish, especially colloquial terms, and just being able to think on your feet and being all right, I'm pretty sure I know what this is. And sometimes it leads to funny confusions or funny errors, so it's kind of interesting doing that. And you get really good at having the confidence to be just tell me what you guys mean, because I don't understand that word exactly, and the difference in that word can make a huge difference in the decision we make.
So speaking about the language, what are your favorite local slang, Japanese words that you love?
So many. One of my favorites, chapuz, which is when you fix something but kind of halfway very cheaply just to get through. So if your car breaks down and you chapuz it, it's not 100% functional, but you get through. I think it's funny because it's something that's very common in how things are fixed. Pilas, which means when someone's very smart. I think that's a great word. I love all the phrases that you get so used to hearing. When somebody leaves, it's always que le vaya bien, para servirle, all these different phrases that you just, and before you even know it, you're using them. My least favorite is fíjese que, because I even have started using it because it's just so part of the language and you adapt to it. But whenever I hear someone from the team say fíjese que, I know that what's about to happen I'm not gonna because it's either gonna give an excuse or explain why something didn't work, or usually it's before a big problem, or when someone, it's a nice way when we're in meetings for people to disagree as well. And so there's some people who use it a lot, and as soon as they come in and start fíjese que, it's just I know I'm on alert. I'm what is about to happen? I know the next sentence is going to be something I need to react to immediately. But it does become so part of the your vocabulary that I use it all the time now too.
Are there any words that you use when you're speaking English that you just throw in either a slang or a Spanish word?
Absolutely. I think that I only really speak Spanglish now, especially when I need to do things. It's really hard when I do interviews for the foundation or different things where I need to talk about the project in solely English. I always use básico instead of junior high. It just becomes such it just becomes such a habit that's hard to break. Then there's some words that are just confianza and different words that are better in Spanish or mean something a little bit different, and so I get used to using them. But I definitely drop in a lot of Spanish words, and I have to really concentrate when I have to do an interview or write a report or do something just in English, because the words are almost identical to me anymore.
There's no really exact translation for any language, and so when you want the word but also the sentiment behind it, you can't translate in the same way. You try and find the words that kind of fit, but whether it's like when you're speaking Spanish to someone and you want an English word that says something, or if you're speaking English to somebody and you have a Spanish word that like really describes a situation or a moment, and you're like, I just won't be able to translate this well. The other word just works perfect. So EFTC has offices in 3 different countries, one of them being your home country of the US, and then the other one being in the UK, and then here in Guatemala. Can you talk about the cultural differences you face working with these 3 different countries?
Definitely. I think that even though you think that like the United States and UK are so close, there's a lot of different phrases, there's a lot of different like workplace culture. So I think the same kind of thing I've done with Spanish. And some of the words and phrases I've kind of adopted. There's been times that Dave's been visiting and I'll say something and be like, that was very British, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. Or there'll be times that, especially with like, I feel like United States culture is so direct. And so when working with both the UK and working with Guatemala, especially Guatemala, I've adapted the way that I speak. And then sometimes I realize that I'm not getting to the point either because I'm trying so hard to work around, to beat around the bush the way you would and being less direct. So I think it's an interesting like dichotomy, because you would think that the cultures between the UK and US would be closer, but now sometimes when I'm writing things like organization or program, I can't remember which way that I would usually spell it either. So it's funny the way those things all start to blend together after a few years.
It's also interesting, all 3 accents. Because it doesn't matter what language you're speaking. If we're speaking in English or speaking in Spanish, everyone has a very different accent. And even when you're speaking the same language, like let's say everyone's speaking English, sometimes the people from the US can't understand the people from the UK, or vice versa, or the people, you're speaking in Spanish and you say it with an accent that people here in Guatemala don't understand. So all those accents all together cause kind of a cultural mix of sorts as well.
Definitely, especially with some of our donors who have very thick accents, and it's really hard for me to understand sometimes what they're saying.
Yeah, and we have donors from all around the world too, so we're just not hearing US, UK, Guatemala, but sometimes we're hearing, I don't know, Greek, or that was the first one that came to my mind, but I don't even know if we have a donor from there, but just like a bunch of different things. What is something that most people wouldn't think about when working and living in a different country that you've experienced?
I think that, I don't know why this comes to mind first, but like something that's so funny to watch in the school is in the States, like if a bathroom, like if the restroom's empty, if you're not using it, you leave the door open, and here you have it closed. And so it becomes to the point that I do it. And so like when I go back home, people are always like knocking on the door too, because they can't figure out if someone's in the bathroom or not, because you would just leave it open. And then here it's so funny because you'll watch, especially when like new people come to work here from other countries or are volunteers, just doing a whole line outside the door, because the closed door must mean that like somebody's in there. And we have to, for a while we had to put a big sign on the door that was like, if the door's closed, it could also not be occupied, so just knock. And so those little things that you don't think is a big deal, but it can actually cause like quite a bit backup and quite a bit of like confusion in an organization for something so small as should the bathroom door be closed or open when you're not using it.
That's a funny one. I lived in a different country and nobody would say bless you. And that got me for like, I lived there for 2 years, and for the 2 years, every time someone would sneeze and nobody would react, like it's not a big thing either. It's just like silence, but I was like, we have to acknowledge the sneeze. Yeah, very interesting. So what has kept you at EFTC all these years?
I think a lot of things. I really love and respect the staff, the team that I work with, both in the UK and here and in Guatemala. And so I think being in a place where I work with people that I really relate to, that I really care about, that have such a passion for the same kinds of things, has kept me. I think it's rare in life that you can find a place where you feel like you really belong. And that's what I've always felt in Guatemala, and I've definitely felt that here at EFTC as well. The first time I walked into the school when I was doing my interview process, I just thought it was such a like beautiful, warm, inviting, chaotic, lovely place, and I really felt akin to it. So I think that's kept me here. Another thing that's kept me here is that every year is a different challenge. It's a different opportunity to grow. I really like being pushed, and this job and this place definitely pushes me. So I think that's why I like it. I like the challenge. I like the fight. And I really admire the work that's being done. I always wanted to work in international development, but knew that I wouldn't be able to like push paper or be in policy or be in the higher up organizations, that I really wanted to be on the ground and see the work day in and day out and feel like I was part of it. And I think the best part about EFTC is whether you spend 5 minutes or you spend weeks or you've been part of it for years, it doesn't take long to see the impact that each person is having on the students and the opportunities that they have. And then the last reason is, I think, why everybody stays involved with EFTC is the students themselves. There's just something so full of love and light and opportunity and resilience and something so great about them that I've come across people who worked here 10 years ago who still want to come visit the students and come visit the school. And the students have taught me so much in just a short time, and I imagine they'll continue to teach me a lot. And so that's why I stay.
Do you have a specific memory with the students and that whole, everything that you just explained that you keep with you? Just like one moment that is super special?
I think there's just so many. It's so hard. I think like the class or the students that I remember the most is like most people are the kindergartners my first year, and they're going to be 6th graders next year, which is huge. And so I remember them and this, how excited they were about volunteers and how excited they were to be around people, and so watching them grow has been really exciting for me, because I've been able to watch them go from 5 till 6th grade, and they are very energetic and rambunctious and naughty group of kids. And so I think that's been really impactful for me. And then I just think there's so many little moments, like last year watching parents put the graduation caps on students and like them both, mother and son, like crying at this like opportunity that they'd had. I'm very pregnant, nearing the end of my pregnancy, and I had a little girl the other day hug me around the waist and put her head on my stomach and say, "Little baby, we just love you so much." And so those kinds of moments are things that I think stick with me. There's definitely been times where I feel tired, or I feel overwhelmed, or I feel stressed, or we're just working so much, especially over pandemic, and are we going to get out of this, and is it going to be okay? And sometimes just like walking to school and seeing the students, or there was a student who had a child really young and was able to graduate this year, and seeing her holding her 3-year-old son going up on the stage, and he was a baby in 6th grade when she graduated, and seeing those moments. There were moments during pandemic that I would see her walking with her baby to school, and I was like, it's all worth it. Like seeing her graduate and seeing her get through it makes everything else worth it. So I think just every day with the kids is full of, they say the funniest things and they do the funniest things, and all of those things definitely keep me going.
I have not had the exact same experiences as you, but definitely am one of the people that have felt the impact of the kids being around and all the energy that they bring. And anytime I'm having a bad day, I just grab the camera and go into one of the classes, and it just makes me instantly feel better to be around them. How is your life different here than if you were to be living and working in the US?
I think it's so different in so many ways. Work culture is very different here. I think within EFTC and within Guatemala, like we have shared offices, we chat, we visit each other. There's a lot of like flexibility and communication. I worked in an office only for about a year before coming to Peace Corps, but you would never like go into somebody's office unannounced, or it's just very different. So I think my life would be very different in the States. I remember my previous office job in the States, I would get up and drink so much coffee just to get up and be able to socialize with people, which here there's never an end of people to talk to and to like relate to and to bounce ideas off, and it's very collaborative. So I think that's different. I imagine just like where I would be in my career would be different as well. I've had a lot of opportunity here at the EFTC at a very early age, so I think that would have made a difference. Only working in one language or working in my native language would be a big difference. And then I think just the lifestyle that I would leave. The States is very, not all parts of it because it's so massive, but I think in general a cultural thing is very focused on what you have and who you know and where you're at in your position and what car you drive and all of that. And I was never quite made for that. I like engaging with people more. I like being passionate about what I do. So I think really the biggest thing is working here for EFTC has allowed me to be able to live and build my life here, but also to do something that I really, really feel strongly and care a lot about.
What are some similarities that people would be surprised about between here and the US?
And one of the biggest things that I think about is sometimes I think when people come here from the US or from other countries, they have this expectations of like what the kids will be like, that they'll be different, that their experiences will be different. I think something, especially watching kids grow and develop here, that you learn is there is a lot that we have in common. Like, for example, at our graduation, all of the 16-year-olds, it was like the girls in a circle dancing, looking over their shoulders at the boys who were sitting on the stage pretending they weren't watching the girls being too cool to dance. And that was definitely my experience at school dances when I was 16. Some of the things that the students go through are so hard to relate to because of the different contexts and all the things that they face are really, they have insurmountable or what seems to be insurmountable obstacles that they continue to be able to overcome. But then other things like who's not talking to who, or who's gossiping about who, or who has what dress that they also want, a lot of those things are such shared experiences. So I think that's something that's really interesting to be able to live through, and I think something that people don't always realize, that there are a lot of similarities between cultures and like shared experiences, especially with teenagers or just kind of teenagers everywhere you go.
I would say not just teenagers, I would say all of the grades. If you go to a kindergarten class here versus in the US, I think that they're very similar. Like, they're so cute, they have so much energy, and yeah, they can't sit still wherever you are, whatever country you're in. Now it's time for our special segment. You have only 15 seconds to share the best gem you know about Guatemala. So that can be either a place, a food, or tradition. What do you think is Guatemala's best, I guess, kind of hidden gem?
I think the hidden gem is a lot of people come for Semana Santa or other big occasions, but actually New Year's is the best time to come because the whole country sets off fireworks. So instead of just having your few fireworks for 4th of July or for New Year's and where you live, you can watch the whole country shoot them off at different times, very close to your face, all the time. You can see people shooting off fireworks in the middle of the streets and cars still driving through them. It's one of the most beautiful things. I love it. It's way better than watching the ball drop.
I like that until you said close to your face. And then I was like, maybe not.
Oh yeah, they're right there. the piece of paper falling on your face. It's beautiful.
I love that. That's a good one. So before we finish our episode, we'd like to remind you of the special competition for our supporters to win one of our very new, very lovely EFTC shirts. We'd love our supporters to share their favorite EFTC photo. Maybe it's when you visited the school, attended an event, or even at home when you received a letter from a student. Everything is welcome. We'll be sharing the photos on our Instagram, so make sure to follow us and tag us on your post at EFTC Foundation. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing your insight into what it's been like working and living in a foreign country and with EFTC. You have been part of changing so many lives through your work, and we couldn't be more proud to have you as the director of our project.
Thank you for having me. It was very nice to be able to chat with you and chat about something that's so near and dear to my heart, which is EFTC.
See you on our next episode, talking with a family that is part of our program. Our families are integral parts of our students' education and success. Stay tuned on our socials, everywhere at EFTC Foundation.
Thank you for listening to one of our amazing stories of hope. Please visit our site to sponsor a student, visit youth in Guatemala, or learn about what you can do be part of our work.